This should be a very short video. So let's just show what we're going to try and do. We have a list of these particular things here, and they are, as you see on line 17, of the inquiries that we've got in storage. We're displaying the customer. That's the name of the person who made the inquiry, and that's what we've got. What we want to try and do is to replace this and show all of the fields that we need in order to display the whole inquiry as it was made. We also want to put a little lead line that shows what we've got and tells the people what they're looking at. So that's what we're going to do. What we need to do is to determine where we're going to put it. So just before the double braces here, I'm going to create an ion label. I'm going to put the data we want to display inside this particular label. And what we're going to show you is just that it's just HTML, and that's all we use. We just use HTML in order to format what we've got as the data entry, and we use the string interpolation with the double braces, as you can see here, in order to populate the HTML data in here. So I'm going to copy it on from my clipboard. So I've copied it in from my clipboard, and we can now delete that one because we've got it again. So you'll see I'm using an H2. Oh, it's dropped off the opening chevron, or whatever you call it. So an H2. So you're using exactly the same as you would use in a web page, and you're determining the size of the text that's going to be displayed by presets within the HTML5 frame set. So we've got that particular H2, H3, and then a simple para. And it's simply about size here in order to make sure the text of different sizes. So I think what we should do first is we should test that that shows what we want it to show. So it has compiled successfully. So let's just see what happens when I refresh my browser. And I've now got all of the data about each of the inquiries, exactly what we wanted to achieve. So let's remind ourselves where this data is coming from, just to give you a strengthening of that understanding. Is that in our TS file, we've got how we display it. But what we're getting is that in our HTML file, we're using the inquiry service to give us the data that we need. And each one of the fields is classified by inquiry.phone, inquiry.product, and so forth. So that's where our data is coming from. So the last thing we want to do over here on the list is before we get to the list, I want to put a kind of a header for the whole of the list that describes, as I said before, exactly what the user is seeing when they see this particular set of data. So I'm going to make it an H1, and I'm going to put a color equals secondary. Talk more about colors when we get a bit further on in the development, and I can now go outside there and close it off and show some text. And this is just going to say inquiries made. So that's just going to give us a title for the whole of the list that represents what the data is now saying. We'll talk, as I say, more about colour, and then this sits outside the list, so it won't come before each of the items in the list, so that's really important. So let's just test that now. So I will file save and recompile, and that will then show us what has happened. So it has compiled successfully. Let's refresh our page. And there we've got it. That's our title. Oh, it's spelt wrongly. I'll fix that in just a second. In fact, I'll do it right now before I forget. Inquiries made, and then all of the items. And what I want to show you now is that we're not picking anything in particular. Well, if we click any of these, we're clicking the item, and that takes us to the inquiries item for there. So if I now change that to 5, and we've got the new record updated. So we're nearly there. We've got to just add one more feature next, which is about how we can change this here for product into a select, which allows us to select from a range of items rather than allowing the user to enter anything that they might think of as being appropriate.